But I really don't have any regrets. I really don't. I've lived exactly how I've wanted to. I've tried my hardest every single time. I didn't win the matches that maybe I should have always won, but I really gave it my all. So that for me is enough.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Body Serve. I'm Jonathan.
I'm James.
We are fully into grass season right now. Isn't it? Is it your favorite time of year?
I like grass season. It's very short. I mean, it's almost over. Like, blink and you'll miss it.
We haven't recorded since the French Open final. So it's been 2 weeks and we've already had, at least 8 tournaments on grass. It feels like everybody's just trying their darndest to get as much grass practice in as possible in this short stretch before the next slam.
We've had at least as many injuries, unfortunately. I guess if you don't play on grass very often, you're slipping and sliding, you're not used to the way you're supposed to move on the surface. It's slippery. It is grass. Maybe there's a reason we don't play on it very much. But it sucks to see some of these players go down, especially the defending Wimbledon champ, Vondrousova.
There's also players withdrawing from tournaments because of illness, Ons, as well as Rybakina again this past week. So there are a lot of players who are either injured, Andy Murray for one, or just not feeling well at all right now.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the slipping, Jannik Sinner was like on his tuck and roll. Did you see him? Flying around the courts, always on the ground, but then just like flipping up and getting back on his feet. Amazing.
The week of June 10th, who were the winners? There was a very notable pairing that took home titles that week.
Yeah, and it's not the new Gems Life. It's the actual tennis power couple, de Minaur and Katie Boulter.
Is that Tsitsipas Shade?
Yes.
Okay.
Because while they're posting tradwife content, these two are actually winning titles.
It's the second time this year that de Minaur and Katie Boulter have won on the same day. If you recall, earlier in the year, Alex won in Mexico. What was it, Monterrey or something like that? And then took an immediate flight to go watch Katie win her title.
That was Acapulco. Mm-hmm. And then Katie won the same day in San Diego.
This go-round, de Minaur beat Sebastian Korda in the final of 's-Hertogenbosch. It's his third grass final and second win. The first win happened in Eastbourne in 2021, and then last year he was the finalist runner-up to Carlos Alcaraz in Queens. Boulter, she beats Pliskova in the final in Nottingham after beating Raducanu in the semifinals. 's-Hertogenbosch is a dual event, so while de Minaur was winning that on the men's side, on the women's side, Samsonova beat Andreescu. And here we get a repeat of birthday gate.
Birthday humiliation. Why do they need to do that to this woman on her birthday? In Berlin in 2021, Bianca was playing Alizé Cornet, lost, and then as she was crying, they played Happy Birthday. And then this time, during the trophy presentation, again, Bianca was the loser on the day. They started playing this hype version of Happy Birthday. The timing.
At this tournament, Bianca beat Naomi Osaka in 3 sets. Once again, we get a high-quality, good match from Naomi, even if she's not winning it. And this was a matchup that we thought, I'm sure the collective we in all of tennis thought we'd be seeing a lot of when Bianca rose to the top in 2019. Right? These two, much like Naomi and Ash Barty. Bianca and Ash Barty, so many matchups that promise so much we haven't seen in the last 5 years. And here in 's-Hertogenbosch, we got a glimpse of what we may still yet get.
This was only their second meeting ever, Naomi having won the first one. And Bianca was out for 10 months, came back at Roland Garros, and just kind of announced herself, like, I'm here, I'm back.
Which is something she's done previously, quite a bit.
Right. The British players, this is the time of the year they come out of hibernation for grass. You see a bunch of players you never heard of who get wild cards from the LTA. But Nepo baby Jack Draper is making good on the very short grass season. wins his first ATP title, beating Matteo Berrettini, another player who seemed to have been in hibernation, in Stuttgart.
Well, hibernating because of injury, rehabbing.
Sure. Yeah.
Don't call him a nepo baby. Somebody got really upset about that this past week. I forget who it was. A player, I think, or a former player.
Oh, actually, I agreed with Dan Evans one time. Did you see what he said?
What did he say?
He was talking about how difficult it is for working class players to make it in tennis, and that he is not inspired by hearing about some upper class person playing well in British tennis. He doesn't find it interesting.
Wow.
Like, well.
Okay. How did that feel?
Agreeing with Dan Evans.
Yes.
Draper hit 31 aces against Francis Tiafoe. What?
It's grass.
Francis?
It's grass.
But he didn't come anywhere close to that against anyone else.
Right, but we see players have these kinds of serving performances on grass. Milos Raonic did it just recently.
Yes.
Zheng Qinwen served 20-odd aces against Naomi Osaka in Berlin. That's wild. On the face of it, that's wild. But the real reason here is it's grass.
Well, there are more reasons. Francis is not practicing returning big serves. He said that. His returning has been poor. And now, in the following tournament, he went out with injury and he's dealing with an MCL problem?
Jack Draper, he wins that title in Stuttgart. Then he gets to Queens, takes out Alcaraz before losing in 3 sets to the eventual champion, Tommy Paul. So this wasn't a case of big week, let down follow week. He had the big week, then had a huge win against Carlos, defending Wimbledon champion, current French Open champion. And this sets him up so well for Wimbledon. He's good. He's actually quite good.
He is. It will take me a lot to believe that one of these British players will make a splash at Wimbledon, but I'll believe it when I see it.
We both had a bit of FOMO for the Berlin tournament this year because we went last year and the field last year was nowhere near the quality of field that showed up in Berlin this year. This year, 8 of the top 10 players were there. As it turned out, that field was decimated in no time.
It was a great field until things started happening in the round of 16, and then the quarterfinals were an utter disaster. 3 of the 4 quarterfinal matches ended in retirement, and these are top contenders for Wimbledon. Ons Jabeur retired versus Coco Gauff. Down a set, she had an illness. We've got Aryna Sabalenka retiring versus Kalinskaya, and apparently she has a shoulder issue, which is not great timing. And notably, this is the first mid-match retirement of her entire career, and she plays a lot.
Rybakina also retired in the quarterfinals with illness against Azarenka, clearly dealing with some kind of chronic illness here because this is a repeat instance. I'm assuming it's the same thing. Could she be the most unfortunate person to be getting different illnesses over and over and over again? I don't know. That is a possibility. But again, her preparation is interrupted, heading into one of the biggest tournaments of the year.
And then in the round prior, Vondrousova went down and slipped pretty badly and pulled out against Kalinskaya. So Kalinskaya got 2 straight retirements. But we're talking about, outside of Iga, probably the 4 top contenders for Wimbledon. The defending champion, Ons Jabeur, who is the 2-time runner-up, Rybakina, who won the tournament 2 years ago, and Sabalenka, who's been in the semifinals the past 2 times she's played. So there's your top contenders, all questionable.
Some of your top contenders. You didn't mention Coco.
Some, yes, but I'm talking about the best performers on grass over the past few years. That's them.
Okay. The Queen's Draw, while Berlin was boosted this year, the Queen's Draw was diluted because of the competition from Halle.
Yeah, they can thank Roger Federer's legacy for boosting the Halle tournament because it is almost equal in the quality of draws it gets now. Queens used to be that girl. Queens used to be the warm-up before Wimbledon, and they're getting a great draw in Germany.
Tommy Paul beats Musetti in the final, and he gets to hold that absurd trophy. It is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. It is half of a human person, that trophy.
You mentioned earlier that Carlos went out to Draper in the second round. Dumonor, who was the runner-up in 2023 and had just won the Saratogenbosch tournament, goes out to Musetti in his first match. And Musetti, of course, gets all the way to the final.
Raonic set a 3-set ace record in Queens, 46 aces versus Cam Norrie, meaning he served an ace more than half of his total service points.
It was so good, it got on to CBC News, and they brought on the guys from Matchpoint Canada to talk about it.
Raonic did not get a main draw wildcard into Wimbledon, and he decided that he won't be playing qualifying, and thus he will not be playing Wimbledon this year.
Mm-hmm. More on wildcards later, not too much, but we do have to mention it. In Halle, Sinner, Hurkacz in the final. Hurkacz is going to be a big-time contender at Wimbledon, despite his so-so record at majors, to be totally honest. But the big story is that Jannik Sinner wins a title after becoming number 1. He's the 9th player to win his first tournament after grabbing the number 1 ranking. So it's actually a lot more common than I thought.
You're not impressed?
No, I am. But the 9th, it's not as a notable of a stat. Mm-hmm. But it's cool. It's a shift in surface.
Easily top player on the year heading into Roland Garros, was beset by injury, still made the semifinals, changing surfaces again, showing that he's up to the task. He can play on all surfaces, and this is not great for the rest of the field.
No, surely you have to see Alcaraz and Sinner as the 2 top picks for Wimbledon, right? I mean, it's not much of a hot take, but still.
How did you just pronounce Carlos's name?
Oh, well, Andrew Castle would be pretty upset.
This man, and this happened just after we had done that Djokovic segment, right?
Djokovic, yes.
Djokovic. And specifically with British people just not being able to pronounce Novak's last name or choosing not to, what have you.
Or having a very specific accepted pronunciation of certain names, right? Not just Djokovic, but many others.
Carlos is playing in Queens, and Mr. Castle thinks that Carlos is speaking to the umpire, complaining about the way that his name is being pronounced. Turns out that was not the case. But that sent Andrew Castle into a tailspin. Mohamed Layani called time, and that left him with 10 seconds to get his entire rant out, and he just went on and on and on and on, talking about, look, you're going about pronunciation. If anyone's getting all wound up...
Oh, wow. You know something truly annoying is coming when someone says, if you're going to get all wound up about it. Nobody actually was wound up except for you.
This was an actual non-issue. Then he goes on to tell us about how he knows how to pronounce Carlos's last name, but really he just doesn't. The unspoken part is that he doesn't have to and he won't. Because if you get into that having to pronounce everything the right way all the time, then you're going to have to do that, this is going to sound that way, da-da-da-da-da. Doesn't make sense. Y'all need to just shut up and deal with it.
And then we're going to be talking about Bjorn Boy. Not Bjorn Boy. The point is, nobody asked. Why are you even talking? It was absolutely unhinged. And then the speed with which he went through, it's Alcaraz. Yeah, we know. We get that you know how to pronounce it correctly. Thank you so much for demonstrating. And the point of this entire rant is that I know, but I'm not going to do it. Okay? Nobody asked you. It's very strange. All of this was precipitated by a rule experiment that was launched by the ATP these past few weeks about the shot clock. Carlos was really annoyed by the whole thing and said he'll be filing a formal complaint with the ATP, but the trial was starting the shot clock automatically 3 seconds after a point ends. On any point, regardless of the length, it takes out the umpire's subjectivity from the process. Why are they doing this? I don't really know. In doubles, they were trying out 15 seconds between points, so even worse, and then only allowing 40 seconds on changes of ends.
Otherwise known as changeovers?
Yeah, we're in England now. I thought I'd be really proper. Allegedly, players were informed by email a few weeks before this thing was going to start, and you know how players in email work. Not great. But to me, this is just like another way to diminish the product for the people on the grounds in favor of some magical improvement that's going to drive eyeballs to the game on TV, like on broadcast. Because if you're at a tournament, it's hard enough to get into a match on changeovers and all this stuff, right? They make it very difficult, and it's very unpleasant. If you've paid all this money and you're trying to get on a court, there's this big-ass line, all these people are leaving at the same time. It's like, I don't really think that they care that much about ticket holders compared to broadcasting media rights.
Jamie Murray, who was the tournament director in Queens, he read the emails. He read all the emails and he said, I am going to abide the company line. He said, quote, I'm excited to see the ATP continue to try to test ways to figure out things to try to improve the doubles product.
I think it's interesting to see a player transition into the role of tournament director, because I can't really see Jamie saying this if he were actually playing in the tournament. I would be very surprised.
For Carlos, he went on to say, I feel like I was in a rush all the time. I had no time to do my routine. And he says that he's going to take up a complaint. He's going to write a 4-page letter and seal it with a kiss.
As he should. I just don't get why you would experiment with a rule change in a real tournament, with results that matter. You experiment with these things at, I don't know, like lesser tournaments of lesser importance, exhibitions, maybe Laver Cup, the next gen, of course, they do a lot of rule experimentation. And my other thing about this is, if it improves the experience for players and fans, fine. I'm all for you experimenting, but it's like this constant chase to solve problems that I don't really think are problems, right? The shot clock issue. Are people not watching tennis because there's too much time between points? And if you reduce the time between points or take away the umpire's discretion, doesn't it disincentivize players from playing really long rallies? Which is also something that fans seem to enjoy, and something that the leagues use to promote the sport, right? These amazing 40-shot rallies. I don't get it.
The Wimbledon wildcards. Every last one of the gentlemen's singles wildcards belongs to a British gentleman. All 8 of them. I guess there's no reciprocal nothing with...
No, I guess it's with France, the US, and Australia.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Wimbledon does what they want. And no interest in starting a whole other wildcard war after Roland Garros. But they do this thing where they leave spots open, usually in the qualifying draw, I think, for the winner of the Oakley Challenger. And same thing on the women's side. This year, no British men made it to the final of those lower events. So what did they do?
They just left them on the table. Not awarded to anybody.
Yeah.
And of the 6 wildcards that were issued to gentlemen's qualifying singles, all 6 of them were British players as well.
And then 3 of them were just not awarded at all, which I suppose there's a very strong argument that that's the fairest thing possible, that you just give it to the next people in line in the rankings.
So far, 6 men's doubles wildcards have been awarded. 6 women's wildcard doubles have been awarded. All 12 of those wildcards have gone to British pairs. There are only 4 of all the wildcards that have been issued for this tournament. Only 4 of those wildcards have been given to a non-British player. And those are Angelique Kerber, former champion, Naomi Osaka, Ayla Tomljanovic, Caroline Wozniacki. Actually, it's 5, because Claire-Vivienne Gounoue is one of them.
Oh, okay.
In women's qualifying singles.
Okay. Caroline was famously not given a wild card to Roland Garros. Her father went on a rant about how this isn't juniors. My daughter's being disrespected. It's disgusting. Even though she's entered every single tournament since her return with a wild card, including this Wimbledon. Ayla Tomljanovic only got one because She was the runner-up in Birmingham this weekend, losing to Putintseva in the final. That wildcard that's normally held over for the Ilkley champion or the ITF champion, that was Rebecca Marino in Ilkley. They didn't give it to her, but they gave it to Isla instead.
Let's segue into some of the etc. news from tennis the last couple of weeks. This as I watch West Indies' last Super 8 match. Winner take all with a place into the final 4 of the tournament of the Cricket World Cup, playing South Africa. And as you can look on my phone, what do you think the current state of the match is right now?
5 runs and 2 wickets down already?
Yeah, that's very bad.
That is. But, it's only 2. There's 10.
Well, that is quite the optimism on your
I'm a
part.
very optimistic fan. To be fair, I don't really know what's going on.
Maria Sakkari, what's going on with her?
Well, I'm glad you asked. She did fire her second coach over the last few months. David Witt, who had been with Venus Williams for many years, and then Jessica Pegula, seems to be a great coach, has a great reputation, but things clearly didn't work out with Maria. She let him go. This news came out shortly after her loss to Azarenka in Berlin. Sakkari had been with her friend and coach Tom Hill for many years before that and realized that they had gotten to a place where he kind of had taught her everything he could. And moving to David Witt seemed like a great idea, and they had some great early results. Not at majors, though. This is the problem. There was only one major since they got together. It was Roland Garros. Maria lost in the first round. But as I said a few episodes ago, her results on the main tour seem to have improved.
You have here written, is the call coming from within the house?
Well, these are the things we have to ask when players go through coaches quickly. Are you looking for something external that you're not going to find out there? You know what I mean?
What do you mean?
I don't know. I don't know Maria. I don't call her at home, but is there something psychological that is holding her back? Because she is very talented. Is there something that a coach can't give you?
The number of players who are skipping the Olympics, that list is piling up. We learned that Arina Sabalenka and Ons Jabeur were the latest to announce. Raducanu as well. A big part of the US top 50 won't be playing. Ben Shelton, of course, we now know that Francis Tiafoe is injured, but he wasn't planning to go anyway.
Right.
Sebastian Korda, Madison Keys, they too won't play in Paris. And so, Chris Eubanks and Marcos Giron on the men's side and Emma Navarro on the women's side will represent the United States.
Great news for them that they managed to slip in. Very competitive on the women's side. We're looking at, the world number 20 or 21 needing someone to drop out in order to get into this draw. A lot of people are saying, if you don't take this chance to play the Olympics, you may never have that chance again and you're going to regret it the rest of your life. I don't know. I've never played in Olympics. I very strongly feel that the players can choose whatever they want to do. And if it's not an event that's important to them and they feel like it's going to jeopardize their chances at other tournaments, then yeah, do what you want.
We talk about scheduling so much on the show, about how the tournament schedule for the entire year is too long, the players don't get enough time off, the off season is too short, and then here you have this tournament just plopped into a very inconvenient part of the schedule where players are trying to move from grass to get to hard court to actually prepare for a fruitful hard court season. You go from Roland Garros, where you've had this long stretch of clay events, and you have this really short turnaround to play on grass. We see the players doing that now, scrambling to get grass match play in. And then they're expected to then go do that again, to go back to clay, to then scramble again, to prepare for hard courts. We see the injuries. That's an increasing part of the sport. And especially for players who don't like clay, I totally get it. I totally get it regardless. Because I think the Olympic tennis event is an event with made-up import in terms of like overall impact on the greatness of somebody's career. You know, Monica Puig is an Olympic gold medalist. She'll be able to hang her hat on that the rest of her life, but that'll be it.
I think, yeah, you can use it to enhance the career of an already great player, like Andy Murray having 2 gold medals. That's great. But there's no marks on somebody for not having a gold medal. Like if Novak never wins an Olympic gold medal in tennis, does that mean he's not the GOAT? Surely not, right? I don't think it really diminishes a player's resume very much if they don't.
But for players who aren't in GOAT contention, who aren't top singles players, somebody like a Nicole Mellicar Martinez. She's the top-ranked American doubles player, and she was not nominated to the team. And so when she wasn't on the team, people were asking questions, and she took to Twitter to let us know what was what.
Yeah, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's long, but she posted an explanation. She said, "Many have asked about my nomination, so I want to clarify what happened. I am absolutely eager and available to represent Team USA in Paris, but unfortunately I was not selected. This news deeply saddens me, as it, etc., etc. According to the ITF rule, a top 10 ranking guarantees a spot in the draw, provided the athlete is nominated by their country. However, since my country did not nominate me, I am not on the team. I disagree with this rule. Given that doubles has an individual ranking, there should be clear criteria that allow players to qualify based on their own achievements, same to singles, rather than leaving it up to selection. I can't think of another sport where it's possible to be number 1 in your country and top 10 in the world and not secure a spot on the team." I did appreciate that because I was so confused. I find the Olympic qualification for tennis already fairly cumbersome and confusing because the way I had read it and the way that we read it over the air a few episodes ago was that if you're a top 10 doubles player, which she is, that's an automatic entry. And apparently that's not the case if your country refuses to nominate you.
What it's really allowing for is the US Olympic brass to privilege singles players. To say, hey, you come to the Olympics and you can have a lark in doubles. Even if you don't really play doubles that much, we'll let you play doubles and Miss Nicole sucks to be you. Like nobody even knows you anyway, kind of thing. They're trading on star power more than people's actual credentials in doubles for this tournament, which I think dilutes the product.
I felt like it was very unfair to her, and she is right. Like, if you're running the U.S. Olympic track and field trials, if you're, if you run the fastest 100 meter, you're in. You've made it. They have decided to play somebody who is already in the singles draw in doubles. So most likely it'll be Collins Krawczyk on the second team and Coco and Jesse Pegula on the first team. Although I've seen the AP reported that, but NBC Sports reported that it was going to be Navarro Krawczyk. So, I mean, they have time to decide.
Meanwhile, we got confirmation that one of the Spanish pairs will be Rafa Nadal with Carlos Alcaraz.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously huge for Spain. It's huge for tennis's visibility in general, if, of course, Rafa plays. Granollers is the number 2 player in doubles in the world, and he'll play with either Davidovich Fokina or Carreño Busta, who are players who are already going to be there for singles. Carreño is using his protected ranking for singles, by the way.
Much like Rafa is.
Yeah. Just going back to the scheduling in general, Olympic tennis, it's going to be from July 27th to August 4th. So like you said, it's in that time when players are starting to rev up on hard courts. So it's during the period where you might be playing in Washington, D.C., for example, or Atlanta. And then as soon as the Olympic tournament ends on August 4th for the finalists for the gold medal match, the following day, Monday, August 5th, the Canadian Open will start in Toronto and Montreal the very next day. The schedule in Toronto and Montreal will be a little bit different because normally the tournament ends on a Sunday, like most tournaments, but this year it'll go Monday to Monday.
Something we alluded to earlier in the episode was Andy Murray's injury. And this injury that he sustained in Queens will possibly rule him out of Wimbledon.
Yeah, be careful.
Seen two differing reports on that today. His camp has denied that a decision has been made definitively yet. But it also puts into question his availability for the Olympics. A former 2-time singles gold medalist. Obviously an event that is very important to him. What happened to Andy this past week?
Playing in Queens against Jordan Thompson. In Queens, he had to retire against Jordan Thompson, and he said that coming onto the court, he felt this shooting pain through his back and down his right leg, plus a loss of coordination, which is very scary. So all of this, it sounds, maybe like sciatica, a disc problem. But he had to go into surgery on Saturday to get a spinal cyst removed. And the ATP tweeted this morning that Andy was out of Wimbledon. That was quickly removed because the Murray camp requested it to be removed. They have not made an announcement yet.
The Telegraph ran with the story.
They did. And then the BBC and the Times later said, no, it has not been confirmed. I cannot imagine the ATP running with this without getting confirmation from the Murray team. That is wild. Behind the scenes, I'm sure they could assume he wasn't playing. Like, it would be surprising if he's ready in time. But he's maintaining that he's going to leave that option open. And they also left a double spot open for Andy and his brother Jamie, in case Andy plays.
This is a clear case of wanting to be first.
Yeah. But why would the ATP want to be first? Right. That's not their job.
Someone who is also confirmed to be missing Wimbledon, and this comes as no surprise, Rafa Nadal will not be in attendance this year. He is remaining on clay to put all his preparation and efforts into singles on clay, on Philippe Chatrier, at Roland Garros. And the reports continue to be positive for Rafa and his current health. Tony Nadal has recently come out to say that Rafa is playing well, he's feeling good, and that he has a real good shot in Paris.
Okay. In some good news, Karolina Muchova just dropped this on social media this week. Hello, I'm back. I'll be at Wimbledon. Like, okay. I wasn't prepared for that.
Not only that, she'll be lacing up to play singles on Tuesday in Eastbourne.
Oh.
Ahead of Wimbledon. This is such great news. As you all probably know by now, we are big fans. Big fans. And other big news for Wimbledon, ABCD is back together.
That's Ashley Barty and Casey Dell'Acqua.
Barty will be playing in the Legends Invitational Doubles. Is that what it's called?
I think so. Yeah.
Alongside her, for many years, playing partner stalwart in doubles, mentor, mother figure, friend.
Not a mother figure.
She said as much.
Big sister?
Maybe. And I wonder, what does this portend?
Oh my God, stop.
Does it portend anything?
Oh, you sound like the people who are like, oh, I saw Serena practicing the other day.
No. Ash Barty has been so adamant that she has no desire to come back to tennis. You'll see her at an event, but it's almost like she wants nothing to do with tennis.
Right.
In a playing, like she's tried to distance herself from the playing part of it for so long. And you know how these athletes are. Once you come back in any form and you get a taste of it, you never know. You never know. She's still super young.
I mean, I would love it, but just as we never tell an athlete when they should retire, we also never tell an athlete that they should not retire or unretire. But man, I would really, really love to see her back on tour. I think people didn't realize what they had till she was gone.
Don't it always seem to go?
Okay, back to bad news.
Oh boy. This just...
Let's just jump in. The Tsitsipas on Twitter shared this video of like this tradwife content where the guy's saying, like, this is my role as a man and this is her role and we live harmoniously and this is how it should be. The line that really took me out was, oh wait, no, sorry, the woman was narrating. She said, he provides and protects, I multiply.
It was...
I multiply.
It was like a commercial for 1955 picket-fenced Middle America.
I mean, let's go back farther than that. This is about like having 8 children.
You're saying this is the wagon days?
Oh, yeah. You know, I feel that I don't have the energy anymore, or I don't have the interest anymore to at least to talk about this stuff on social media, right? I'm not jumping into that, but we'll talk about it here. I saw a lot of people, a lot of female fans, because a lot of Tsitsipas's fans are young women, a lot of young women having to look at this and reckon with it and either reject it and say, you know, I'm so disgusted by him, or sometimes get defensive and say, well, all y'all's faves either have done worse or most likely believe this stuff as well. And I understand the impulse, but I disagree with it, because this isn't really a place for whataboutism. Like, let's argue this on the merits of what we're seeing, right?
Because he is the one sharing this.
Because there is a difference between having these beliefs privately versus amplifying them to your millions of followers.
And so if you find this abhorrent, what is the excuse here? Is it that, well, this doesn't clearly reflect his views, he's just showing something that was interesting to him? Is that something that he could plausibly say to get away, to defend himself? No, because you've chosen to put this entire clip on your Instagram, and it's pretty clear cut what it's saying. Like, we all know what is being said here and what... Okay, so just because something is a quote-unquote belief doesn't mean that it's sacred or that it's something that I have to respect. Because, you know, people say, well, you're allowed to believe what you believe in, and I'm allowed to believe what I believe in. And separate and apart, but equal, we must exist. No, we don't. I don't have to respect your belief. I can sit here in judgment of it and think it's trash. And I'm perfectly fine with that.
Because a lot of us have lived our lives being told that our beliefs ain't shit, are disgusting and abominable. You know, like, we've all been there. But I saw a lot of people saying, well, I don't agree, but this is his traditional Greek Orthodox view. Like, okay. As soon as you say that this is someone's belief, now it's sacred. Now it's beyond reproach. You're not allowed to share your feelings about it at all.
And so what is the dream here? That Paula retires soon so she can start multiplying?
Apparently.
Oh.
But, I mean, we've seen this misogynistic stuff, let's call it what it is, from him before and from other players. And there is this very disturbing trend and growing acceptance of, like, regressive views like this on gender and sexuality among young men of that generation and younger.
It's not just relegated to incels. It's become more pervasive in a less extreme form with younger people.
So Twitter under Elon Musk is a platform that amplifies this type of belief. But from, you know, what you read, what you see, a lot of young men are vulnerable to becoming radicalized or red-pilled, as they say, to this type of extremely regressive viewpoint. And, you know, incels, they're kind of like the buzzword. You know, we've started calling any man who thinks this way incels. That's the most extreme version, perhaps. But overall, this is just, I don't know the psychology behind it, but it's a misogynistic worldview.
Nick Kyrgios, for example, he idolizes Andrew Tate. And it's not uncommon for young men to find Andrew Tate, quote-unquote, interesting. Or feel that he has
empowering,
interesting things to do and say. These are the ideals of men's rights activists. That's what it is.
It's just, to me, become far more mainstream among younger people in a way that was surprising to me.
Kyrgios constantly trashes the WTA, pled guilty to assault against his ex-girlfriend.
Yet, Naomi Osaka, first of all, her production company bankrolls his podcast called Good Trouble. Good Trouble taken from a civil rights figure, John Lewis, framing this podcast as some sort of social justice
agitation for good.
When he has ever advocated for any type of social justice, I don't know. I haven't seen it. But Naomi's agency, along with her agent Stu, hosts this podcast. They're going to play mixed doubles together at an exhibition event before the US Open. Naomi was recently a guest on Good Trouble. So I don't believe that Naomi should be shielded from criticism here. She very much should be criticized for this association because in her way, like, in her position as this progressive figure, right? This person who is changing the way we're thinking about a lot of things, including mental health, her position as an Asian and Black woman, and the way that she's spoken out during Black Lives Matter movement, for example. Nick, again, gets to benefit from this proximity to Blackness and proximity to Naomi as a really important figure, and she's all in.
She's complicit.
Right? We can't blame Stu. Right? We can't say, oh, this is all Naomi's agent.
Because that's one of the arguments,
that's
right?
what some people say, but this is her. She's a grown woman.
Bankroll and then sit down on the show.
Right. And this is a guy who sits there on Twitter, talks mad shit about women's tennis. And, it's just gross to me. It's very gross. Overall, with the Tsitsipas thing, I personally don't really care about him. It's not disappointing to me because I never assumed he was better than this. But I think we do need to pull back a little and say it is actually possible to criticize somebody without getting into this endless spiral of, what about your fave? What about your fave? Yes, I don't have illusions about my fave. I have criticized Rafael Nadal many, many times.
Still big fans of Naomi Osaka.
Sure, but now I've criticized her, right?
To date, but it shows that they're not beyond critique.
Right. And I'm not saying you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because at some point you probably won't be able to stand anybody. So there has to be this balance between, you can't expect your fave to reflect your worldview and do everything right, but you also should be able to distance yourself enough to be able to criticize what they do and say. And at some point, it's too much. At some point, you have to decide what's too much for you.
Let's finish the episode with a review or comments on the 12 final days. Is that what it's called? The final 12 days?
Federer, something.
I feel like it should have been called Roger instead of Federer.
The title needs work. Many of you may have already seen it on Amazon Prime. I guess there might be spoilers here, but there's not really a spoiler. You know what happens in the end. He retires. I thought it was emotionally affecting. It was an interesting watch, but ultimately not very revealing. It didn't feel like a real documentary.
Sure, but it was way more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And we got a few nuggets. That bit at the end with Rafa and Roger after all the final doubles match business has played out. Ellie Goulding has come out and sang her song and everybody's done crying on court. We go back to the locker room and Rafa is sitting there and he's crying, and then Federer hugs him and then he goes to his side of the locker room, and then Rafa says essentially, enough of this shit.
Let's stop.
Let's stop. And then Roger says, imagine if we had won the match. And then Rafa says, fucking tiafo.
That was so funny. That was really good.
It was?
Yeah, I think that was good. And then they got into this little conversation about Sonego's grunt. And Berrettini chimed in, felt like he had to defend his friend and say, oh, no, guys, he's not doing it on purpose. He's not like that. And Rafa says, for me, no.
Rafa was not having any of it, and Matteo was not backing down. That was his bestie, his buddy, and he had to stand up for his honor. Really, it was his honor.
Oh, totally. And good on him. That's what a friend should do. There was some interesting stuff, I guess, between Roger and Novak. It's very clear that they're not friends, right? But they greeted each other warmly. Maybe it felt like their conversation was a little bit stilted, like they didn't know what to say to each other. But then apparently Roger said something to Novak privately after the whole retirement thing, and Novak broke down. He was very affected by whatever Roger said, which will remain a secret. And it seemed as he was walking back into the locker room, he was kind of inconsolable for a minute and walked off screen. The coverage of the actual retirement ceremony was great. It was hard to live through it again, even not even really being Roger fans. It's just very emotional to watch. But I do think, not to be a party pooper, the fact that the things that people are talking about, one of the biggest is the Sonego conversation, is just okay, there should have been more, more actually about the topic at hand.
And then
it felt very much like this is a kind of a PR documentary like they've been making with all these pop stars. That's just another product they're putting out as part of these contracts, and it didn't really feel like a real film.
I've seen people who are obvious Rafa fans critiquing Mirka. I've seen...
what was that? What was wrong with...
I've seen non-Djokovic fans critiquing Djokovic
right.
and his authenticity. You know, this has always been my biggest problem with taking in something like this. Like, I'm watching it, I'm just trying to enjoy it, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt here and lay my biases to the side as much as I can. I don't have to like Novak to appreciate some of the moments with Novak in this thing.
Right.
And who am I to judge Mirka's supposed authenticity?
Right.
Like, what?
I mean, to me, I felt that's probably what Mirka is really like. Like, I just, we don't know a lot about Mirka. Despite her being so famous and so present, we don't hear her speak very often. She's pretty private. So being able to get that little tiny glimpse I thought was cool. And I felt like she's probably somebody who's the rock in her family. Roger is a very emotional guy. She's probably the tough one.
I don't know. Silly of me, I guess.
I think watching that, I appreciated how weird it must have been for everybody else. Roger and Rafa were clearly like the boyfriends, right? That's my work wife.
Well, at the end, he said the two most important people in terms of making me emotional were Mirka and Rafa.
Right,
his
right.
wife and his husband.
Not his parents, not his kids. It's Rafa. But I thought it must be so strange to be Novak there or Andy, because you're not part of the innermost circle, but you're there to honor this guy you've been playing against for many years. And I don't know, I think maybe you just have to like take the back seat and get through it.
I don't think it's that hard. I think
I'm not saying it's hard. I just thought it was interesting.
I think a self-aware person knows their place. And in that moment...
and Novak did.
Yes, and in that moment, I don't think it's hard to know your place.
Oh, I didn't say it was hard. Where did I say it was hard?
I thought I heard you say hard.
I was thinking about what it would be like to be them.
I thought I heard you say hard. Or difficult, or something. Maybe anyway, I misunderstood.
We'll rewind the tape, maybe. What else? I thought, okay, Roger was talking about Novak and kind of his temper and his energy on court being so different than his. And he was saying, a few times I would yell at somebody or get really mad on court. He said it was all an act. I was never like that. I never cared. I never wanted to do that. And I felt like, I felt like that was a little bit revisionist. Maybe he sees himself like that, but I don't know that that's totally true. I feel like sometimes on court, he clearly did lose his temper, and it didn't feel performative.
It felt churlish
to
me. But that was
said
like when
he cussed out Novak's parents.
Right, but that was said in the context of him pushing back against people who said, well, when you're losing, specifically when you're losing, you play the same way, you show the same emotion, you don't get worked up. And then they cut to images of Novak like tearing his shirt, going, doing the most while he's losing or whatever, being very demonstrative. Mm-hmm. He was just trying to make the case that I tried that maybe once or twice and that's just not who I am.
Okay. Like, that's not me.
That's what he was trying to say.
I get that. And people would say, why aren't you fighting? And he would be like, well, I am. You just don't know what it looks like for me.
Bottom line, worth a watch. I recommend.
Yeah, totally.
This brings us to the end of episode 346, I believe. Next up will be our Wimbledon preview episode at the end of this week. My name is Jonathan. You can find me on Twitter at tennis_John.
And I'm James, at ElliotJMR.
2 L's, 2 T's. Everything Body Serve related can be found at linktree.com/thebodyserve. Thanks for listening.
Till next time.
Thank you very much.